Good day. Welcome to the Cory Morgan Show. You can see a different background. We're coming live from the floor of the Global Energy Show in Calgary. We got a broadcast booth out here. You can see I'm holding a mic a bit differently, but we're live. We're covering the stories. We don't stop for this. It's been a great time down here. This is a huge show in Calgary. It's a big deal every year. I'm pretty sure I should have asked somebody. It used to be the Global Petroleum Show, but they broadened it to energy, and that's a good way to go. It's a diverse thing. I've got a guest coming on who's taking part in this show, and it's Tracy Nyholt of Tech Jitsu. She'll probably correct me on the pronunciation of that soon. That's all right. Because we're talking about bigger, broader items with these larger companies and energy and security and things like that. And it's an important conversation. I use those live comments, guys. Put them up there. I got to admit, I don't have my big screen to see them. I appreciate the interaction, so I won't be able to read them out. But, have those conversations with each other. Just make sure to keep things civil, We can use that conversation to keep things going on the up and up. So let me start with my usual monologue rant, get things going. Let's talk about the Federation. A nice simple subject, right? The entire point of a federation is to have a mutually beneficial relationship between relatively autonomous provinces. Now, the central government is expected to stick to interprovincial and international issues, while provincial governments are supposed to be left to manage their own affairs. In Canada, that relationship's been turned on its head. The federal government's inserted itself into provincial and even municipal jurisdictions, while it's refused to assert its genuine authority in facilitating interprovincial infrastructure and trade. This has led to a lopsided federation where the provincial leaders are at each other's throats while the federal government milks the division for political benefit. Prime Minister Carney is trying to play both sides. He claims he wants to enable interprovincial energy infrastructure in the national interest. Note that he refuses to use the word pipeline, though. He's granted false authority to provincial groups and provincial governments and Indigenous groups to veto projects. Carney said nothing will happen in Canada without national consensus between all the provinces and Indigenous groups. In other words, nothing's going to happen in Canada, guys. Canada's already been an investment pariah as hundreds of billions of dollars worth of energy projects died in the planning stages due to Justin Trudeau's regulatory scheme. While the world remains hungry for Canada's resources and energy products, investors won't sink a penny into a country that won't guarantee project approval. And with a history of pulling the rug out from under other investments, investors need confidence that the projects will be approved and that Carney simply isn't just offering another walk in the garden path, I guess you could say. Meanwhile, the federal government's spending remains out of control due to overreach. The federal government's pouring funds into pharmacare, childcare, dental care, housing, but none of those things are federal jurisdiction. But then they task the provinces to administer those programs and handcuff them through regulations. It's a cynical political tactic that makes the federal government look like Santa Claus while the local level of government look like Grinches when they can't effectively deliver the services that the government dumped on them with their promises. For example, under the original Canada Health Act, the federal government's supposed to cover 50% of the costs of healthcare provision. Currently, it transfers 20% of those costs. Meanwhile, though, the federal government strictly enforces the Health Act regulations, which prohibit private provision of healthcare options, along with other micromanaging clauses that inhibit provinces from trying to innovative healthcare solutions. The provinces get stuck with the bill but lack the ability to make the changes to the provision structure. Due to this imbalance, access to healthcare is hitting crisis levels in every province in the country, despite spending increases from every province as well. Carney's supposed to be the fiscal wizard. He's supposed to be the man to bring leadership and sense to Canada's economic planning, but so far he's proven to be nothing but an utterer of weasel words. Any mention of getting projects done always comes with a caveat. Consensus should be aspirational, but it can't be a deal breaker. It's an impossible goal, and Carney knows it. He's no less in love with the fantasy than Trudeau is that there's going to be some magical energy source that's going to appear and replace oil and gas if only we could hinder oil and gas development enough. He's an ideologue rather than a pragmatic nation builder, and we're going to pay a terrible price for it. While new spending announcements come in billions weekly, no talk of spending cuts follows. Just paying the interest on the national debt alone costs as much as the GST raises every year. Where's the money going to come from for Carney's plans? The West is already being milked dry. Equalization and civil service hiring is concentrating wealth in central Canada, while the ability for the West to increase its earning through development is being handicapped. We no longer are asking ourselves why we should leave the Federation. That answer is becoming clear to a lot of people. We're starting to ask ourselves why we should stay, and the answers are getting really hard to find. If the federal government isn't there to serve the interests of the nation as a whole, well, people are going to start asking themselves, what is the point of a federation? All right, that's what's got me up and burning. Let's get on to a more rational, cooler discussion and important stuff. We got Tracy Nyholt of Tech Jitsu.
Jitsu, like martial arts.
Okay, so yes, I understand the reference in a sense, I guess, but I'm just not good at the pronunciation necessarily. So it was really interesting. It was great to have you come by here to talk about this, because we've had an energy focus. It's an energy show. Your services, your company talks about corporate security, I guess you could say, in a lot of ways that impact energy areas. Like, it's just a reminder that there's much more to this show than just the energy companies. Can you kind of start to break down what your services are?
Yeah, first, thank you for having me on, Cory. It's an honor. So, as Alberta is showcasing our energy chops, it's important that in addition to being, a stable democracy, a place with great resources, that we have great cybersecurity. Because if bad state actors can come and take down our critical infrastructure, no one's going to trust us. So we really need to take the time and the effort to ensure we have good cybersecurity, and that's what we're all about at Tech Jitsu. So Jitsu just means skill in Japanese, so our name literally means technical skill.
Yeah, so there's been already incidents. It's kind of a whole new world of organized crime. They're holding companies hostage. We're so reliant on our communication structures, our digital well-being, and it's often overlooked as an area for companies, I guess, to invest in and plug those holes, and they're paying a bad price for it sometimes.
Exactly, and companies have done a good job of securing their online and their mobile. Where they haven't done a good job is at the help desk. So in critical infrastructure, it's common for bad state actors to go through the help desk and ask for a password reset to gain access to an account. After they've researched an employee on, the social media of their choice to find out their birthday, their mother's maiden name, all the typical security questions. So we can make that much more secure by using your existing multi-factor authentication and make it easier for the employee.
Yeah, that's my next question. Is everybody's barraged with, I got 100 passwords I got to try and remember. I'm told to change them all the time. I'm told to install this app to keep myself safe and disinstall that one. So you guys provide a service to keep it manageable, I guess.
Yeah, but as security professionals, it has to not only be secure, but be accessible and easy. So I think of my father. One day I was watching him call his credit union and try to change his password, and they asked him security questions he didn't know the answer to. Now he's in his 80s, he's starting to forget things, and it was embarrassing for him. And it was very frustrating, and I never want anybody's father to go through that. So by making a secure push notification to your phone, you can make it easy, you don't have to remember anything, but it's also more secure in keeping you safe.
Yeah, so this kind of security, this applies to, here is a lot of heavyweights playing, big companies here, service companies, oil companies, but your services apply to smaller outfits as well, I imagine.
Yeah, we're working with, a lot of credit unions, but, oil and gas, really anyone who's got a help desk or a call center.
So just something interesting, kind of a side note we talked a little bit about earlier, is I know some educational institutions got hit really hard. They basically blackmailed because, hackers got into their information, and then they managed to get away with some money on that. But part of the problem is there isn't the investment coming on those institutions to cover this kind of security. Do you think that's going to change as they realize the need for this?
I hope so. So I think the challenge when I talk to higher education is that people will donate money for buildings or for classes, but they won't donate for cybersecurity because it's hard to put your name on that.
Yeah, and so what other aspects of your service provide? Like, you got centralized databasing going on. Are there means of, do you help with the detection if something's been breached or closing that hole when it happens? What other areas do you help with? Yeah,
there's some threat analytics. So if someone's tried to get into your account unsuccessfully multiple times, we can flag that as potential risk and alert the help desk analyst or a security investigation team so that we can cut off that account before anything bad happens.
Yeah, so is this I guess just a short-term consultation you guys offer, or are you working ongoing with a company or business once they retain your services?
Yeah, we actually have a product called Caller Verify that does what it sounds like. It verifies a caller is who they say they are. So the way it works, say, the tax authority, CRA, phones you and you're wondering, is it really CRA or is it a bad actor just trying to get my information? You could verify they are who they say they are, and they could verify you are who you say you are.
Yeah, and that's really difficult for just a lay person. You're getting all these calls on your phone all the time. The spoofing is getting so good. The caller ID could be coming up. It could be a very professional person on the other side of that line. Yeah. But it gets hard. Boy, if I got a problem with my taxes, I don't want to drag and get those guys on my case. But I certainly want to find a way to know I'm not sharing, because you do have to share information with the tax man. You just want to know you're doing it right.
Yeah, and that's why we work with the businesses, because I think it's up to business to protect people. It's not reasonable to expect every person to become a cybersecurity expert, but it is reasonable for every business to invest in cybersecurity and ensure that their users and their customers are protected.
So you mentioned earlier too, I mean, AI, video spoofing, things like that. I mean, you can take a known person and basically recreate them in a digital way. How would you guys be able to prevent that sort of thing or shield against it?
Yeah, so the famous use case you're referring to, someone used AI to mimic a CFO's face and their voice, and then they called someone and pressured them into doing a very expensive wire transfer. I think it was $25 million. So the way we would prevent that is to trigger that multi-factor, something you have, authentication from the video call.
Yeah, and I mean, somebody could be destructive even. I mean, we look at the world today. If it's a high-level CEO and something goes out as a false press release, you could make a stock plummet if somebody said something unreasonable. I mean, it's just a game of whack-a-mole, I guess, trying to keep up with the technology and the hackers out there.
Yeah, it absolutely is, and it's up to all of us to be diligent. But I think it's the companies that have the budget for this that they should bear the larger burden, as well as government.
Yeah. So have you been meeting with then and interacting with some of the people here at this show? Have you found it to be a good area for receptive to the services you're offering? Or?
Yeah, we had a great couple conversations at the Texas Canada Chamber of Commerce event. So they had a dinner afterwards, after the energy show, and met a lot of business leaders there who were very interested.
Yeah, well, that's the point of this whole affair, is the networking and getting it together. I just found it fascinating. I've been looking at some great energy-related things, a solar energy provider and well servicing things in different countries here. I'm looking at the Petroleum Association from Nigeria, but all of those other services, I mean, it's just important to get together in a room and realize how important it is. I mean, energy infrastructure, if that gets hacked, we could lose. If pipelines are getting shut down, it sounds like James Bond stuff, but it's a realistic thing that could happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we live in a cold country, so if energy goes out, we're all freezing at night. So we need to work together to make sure our energy infrastructure is secure. And I think that's a place where Alberta can really shine. We're obviously leaders in that we have so much energy, we have so much innovation, entrepreneurial mindset, but we can also lead in cybersecurity. So I spend a lot of time down at Platform Calgary, and there's some amazing cybersecurity companies that are starting up right here in our own province, and we can really help solve those problems and be a leader on the world stage.
Great. Well, before I let you go then, is there anything more you'd like to add, and where can people find out more about your services and offerings?
Yeah, people can find out more about us on callerverify.com, our website. We are having a webinar coming up on June 12th as well. So certainly invite anyone who's interested to join on, and thank you so much for the conversation, Cory.
No, I appreciate it. Appreciate the services you're providing. I mean, if we're going to make mistakes and go broke, let's do it on our own and not be robbed by some of these bad actors that are out there. We need every level of protection we can get.
Exactly.
All right. Well, thank you again, and perhaps we'll talk again soon.
Yeah. Thanks, Cory.
All right. Thank you. All right. So one more time, that was Tracy Nyholt of Tech Jitsu, and yeah, it's easy to stick to just talking about straight energy issues and things like that at a global energy show, but there's all of these other aspects, services, and parts of the whole that keep it all together, and it is important with these kinds of events. So it's been fun here already. I mean, if you are coming down to the show, it's going to be going on tomorrow as well, and it's on this afternoon. We do have a booth just next to the USA booth as well. We got a big cutout picture of Stephen Guilbeault here that some people have been taking selfies with, and others have wanted to throw darts at and things like that. But it's been fun. We can be a little light with things as well. So normally I do my news check-in with Dave, but we're going to let the beleaguered news editor stick in the office there and keep to what he's doing. He's always got a lot to work on. It's kind of a quiet time for him while we're all down here, so he can work on things. I just want to like to remind you, though, we are subscription based, and I got to get that nag into you. It's $10 a month, $100 for a year, and you get full access past that pesky paywall, and it helps support us so we can do things, get out to spots like here, talk to interesting folks. So watch our channels, by the way, this week. We've got Derek was doing a bunch of interviews yesterday. Nigel was doing some. I was talking to Minister Nathan Newdorf earlier this morning. That's going to be going up. So all of those YouTube channels, Rumble, whatever platform you're watching us on, check them out. out. So one person I spoke to was with the it was an Indigenous corporation, or it was for financing and loan guarantees and things like that. That's been a big issue in the energy front lately. I got to keep looking to my right. I don't have my normal screen going on here, but we should talk about that. Some of the questions. I mean, we get political on this. There's been a lot of misinterpretation of what the Indigenous rights are, and that's what I get frustrated with Carney about, right? A false veto authority that First Nations may or may not have. They don't have one. If you go to the UN Declaration on Indigenous Peoples, it's in there. They say you have to get consent, but according to our Supreme Court, no, we don't. But we should consult. If we want to develop our energy further, and we must, even if they don't have the veto ability, partnering Indigenous groups in is just win, win, win. It really is. Because the people who are with the Indigenous community who have concerns, who are upset, well, if they have a piece of it, if they're a partner in it, they're not just a token, I mean, that when I started in the oil field, that's kind of how it was. I hate to say it, but we'd show up, even if we're working on reserve land where there's a definite direct interest, you got to cut a check to certain people, the right people, you get your job done, you move along, and whatever's left behind is left behind. The people as a whole didn't really see a benefit out of that. They didn't see a long-term gain from our operations in the area. I mean, it pays off in the broader scheme of having a low, economy in general that pays for services and things like that. But these are isolated areas, and energy is one of the main industries out there. And if they could be participating directly more in it as partners, as shareholders, and people working out there, building out that sort of thing, it works on so many fronts. It helps the local economy. It helps get the energy products done. And you know what? If there's one thing that terrifies federal politicians more than Alberta doing well, is Indigenous people getting upset with them. You want to stop Carney from shutting down energy projects in Alberta and things like that? Make sure you've got Indigenous partners in it. Have him tell the chief and council of a number of reserves that just invested a whole bunch of money into a pipeline, into a new energy development or any other type of resource development. Let's see you go out there and tell them that they can't do it now, Mr. Carney. He won't. He won't. That's the shield, guys. That's the way to do it. And as I say, not sticking Indigenous people in front as a shield, but having them as full partners in that. And we're seeing more and more of that happening. But at the same time, we've got opponents to development or opponents to independence, which is a separate discussion, claiming that the treaties give a veto power or that the Declaration of Indigenous People does. They do not. I think we have a moral reason and even an economic reason to want to bring Indigenous people on board, but they don't have a veto. So let's stop that discussion, but have a respectful one with each other and go from there. And let's speak about our broken federation in more ways. I don't know if people saw that other story from a judge, some pedophile who had child porn, and the judge said, no, we're going to give him no jail time. And what he actually said was he had a modest amount of child porn. A modest amount. So I guess this is the new legalities in Canada. If you only have just a little child porn, you won't have to go to jail. It's just the volume that you have. This is repugnant. Look, anybody who has that garbage wants to mess with kids. And it doesn't matter if he has just a little bit of it or a lot of it. This is a dangerous person. This is one we've identified. This is one who wants to victimize children. I guess the possession of a small amount of child porn perhaps may not warrant 30 years in jail or 40 years in jail, though it's tempting to say so because it's just such a vile crime what leads to that. But this is where I think you should incarcerate somebody then and study them bloody well closely and watch and see, and if it's possible to try and rehabilitate or determine what kind of threat they are, because we don't like dealing with them after the fact once they've victimized kids. And that gets frustrating. I remember those discussions way back. People might forget about that. There was a fella named Robin Sharp, and this was during the 90s. This is one of the things that got me politically inflamed back then. He actually went to the Supreme Court and got charges against himself thrown out and got the child porn laws thrown out because some of the porn that was taken from him had been hand-drawn stuff, and he was saying it was art, and you can't recognize the context as to whether or not it's porn or not. And for a little while, and I believe Anne McClellan was our justice minister at the time, for a little while, child porn was actually legal in Canada. How embarrassing, because we'd thrown out our own law on it. How is it really that impossible to find the nuance, the common sense on the part of a judge? You see, with things like that, it's a matter of context. That's why we use a judge, not just AI even in court cases. If a person has a family photo album with a couple of kids in the bathtub nude playing, that could be technically called child porn if the judge is an idiot. But at the same time, if a guy has a photo album with pictures of children playing in bathtubs and hundreds of children from all different families, same photos, different context, it's a crime. It takes some thinking, I understand that. That makes some blurry areas. But again, that's why we put very well-paid people in the position of being a judge so they can determine that difference. And Canada has always been woefully light on child victimizing criminals. I don't know why. But this judge should be thrown off the bench to say something like, oh, well, it was only, what was that term again? A modest amount of child porn. That's just sick. You know, one photo is too many. And people say, there's been people who've made that case. They've said things like that, hey, the person indulging in the porn isn't committing a crime. Really? They're supporting something where a crime had to be committed in order for that stuff to be produced. A child was victimized somewhere. And you are contributing to that if you're somebody who consumes that vile stuff. So, you know, we talk about preventative crime management. We talk about trying to stop crimes before they happen. Well, when you're identifying people who are into that sort of stuff early, those are the ones we need to catch before whatever their sick proclivities blossoms into something much worse. Yet here we are in Canada, no jail time, modest amount of child porn. You know, it just makes it hard to get out of bed sometimes when I read stories like this and realize these are the judges. Somebody else brought up another one when I put that out on X who said, don't you remember that other judge who had chided a woman who had been sexually assaulted, saying, why didn't you keep your legs together? He really did. He said that. That was a few years ago. Some of you might remember it. I mean, judges can make mistakes. I understand that. They're not perfect. But really, man? Oh, well, you didn't fight hard enough. Wow. So, I mean, we got a lot of justice issues to deal with. Okay, Gilbo, I mentioned him earlier. Might as well bring that demon up again. I was listening to a fellow earlier. He was talking about, you know, it made news recently with Danielle Smith, Premier Smith, saying that she is not going to allow any more national parks to be formed in Alberta under her watch. And of course, people are all screaming at her, what kind of monster are you? Why would you not want more national parks? This is the game of whack-a-mole with a government that is opposed to all energy development in the West, that wants to strangle our economy, that wants to keep shutting us down. People thought when you put that pinhead Gilboa, that extremist Gilboa, the man who was running around in his little prison orange jumpsuit, the man hanging off of the CN Tower, you know, well, now he's in heritage. He can't hurt anything. Well, yes, here he's found a new way. National parks. If you stick enough national parks in the areas where you want to develop oil and gas, suddenly the oil and gas gets shut down. So he's starting to propose all these new spots. And you can rest assured they're going to be in pinch points that will block pipelines, that will block oil sands development. This game never ends. So thank you, Premier Smith, for standing up. It's not a matter of being opposed to national parks. We've got lots of them, guys. We've got plenty of them. This debate, we've got to change the tone on some of this debate. There's so much ignorance on what a pipeline really is. You know, people think it's some harmful thing. Try to rationalize a little bit. Try to think of energy right-of-ways, infrastructure, and how much impact a pipeline has. A lot of you, if you go out in the bush where there's a pipeline, the only reason you'll know it is because there's a cut line. If you're out on farmland, you won't even know it, except you'll see the signs on the fence posts because there's a pipeline under the ground there. And they don't leak. There's been some blowouts that make big news and they're terrible and that's fine, but we clean them up and we move on and they're rare. You know, it's the safest means of transporting energy. It always has been. Yet we've turned it into something, people are saying, oh my God, how are we're going to build a pipeline, it's going to ruin the environment. Guys, look at a road, just a gravel road that gets cut into an area. We don't hear all that fuss. Guess what? A gravel road with 10 meters on each side of it, takes up as much space and has as much environmental impact as a major pipeline. It really does. And we got hundreds of thousands of kilometers of those. We don't think twice about it. Once the pipeline's underground, it's not even hurting anything anymore. The road, cars are hitting deer and little fluffy bunnies, and there's an impact from that. There's dust going into the air. There's disruption. A pipeline doesn't offer those things. We got to get realistic about what the impact of a pipe is. But people have made it sound as if it's a bad thing. You want to, ask Quebec how well transporting energy by rail works. A lot of people died due to that. The Trans Mountain Pipeline was built in the early 50s. It's been running through the mountains to BC, putting out millions and millions and millions of barrels of oil, and there's never been a problem because they are safe. The other ways aren't. But if we keep demonizing these things, we keep playing upon the ignorance of people not realizing the safety and the reality of the pipelines, we aren't going to get them done. And what their issue isn't the pipeline itself. They're anti-oil and gas people. They're delusional ideologues. They think that we can just shut down oil and gas and the world will go ahead without a problem. Guys, we're an energy-based world. We're the modern world. I saw a dingbat on X, there's no shortage of them on there, talking about, again, we should the damage these energy companies have done and the horrors, and it should be turned back. Do you realize without oil and gas, most of us wouldn't live beyond the age of 40? We really wouldn't. And the alternatives aren't there yet. We've got to get in the right order. If we're going to get off one, show me the alternative first. We've got to have those conversations. Those conversations are happening here at this Global Energy Show. It's interesting seeing all of the people, the names, the presenters coming up. Not seeing a heck of a lot of federal presence here. We got Gilboa, our cutout here over at the Western Standard booth. I noticed Carney didn't come here. With something that powers this nation, that's something that brings in so much revenue to this nation, but the federal government doesn't want to talk about it. Why? Because it's in Western Canada. As I said, right next to me is a Polaron solar energy company. They're talking about solar energy project. This show isn't just about oil and gas. It's predominantly that, but it's not just that. So shouldn't our federal masters be here talking to us? Well, they're not taking the time. They have a presence. They come around, but not much. Because, again, we're dealing with ideologues. Let's see. For interesting things online south of the border, it's going to be interesting to see how much longer the Trump tariff war and the rest is going to go on. We've been watching the Donald Trump, Elon Musk blow up. What a bizarre scene. What a weird time to be alive, eh? But, that partnership is gone. So we got basically the most powerful business interest in the country, Elon Musk, fighting with the most powerful politician in the country, Donald Trump. I think Musk couldn't bite it off back any longer. Look, and this is something I think people are starting to realize more so. When I first was getting critical of Trump with his tariffs and everything else, the cult of Trump went bananas on me. I lost, thousands of followers on X, and I had nasty emails and everything. I'm getting less and less of that. Maybe I've just annoyed the hardcore Trump followers enough that they've just already gone, so they don't hear me anymore. But guys, his economic policy is crap. Quit pretending that his stuff is any good. Tariff policy, that's lazy taxation policy. That's not good economics. That's not good conservative policy. It's foolish protectionism that doesn't work. That's been proven around. It's as bad as a socialist when they keep coming up with rent control, for example, saying rent control will work, rent control will work. No, it's got a 100% record of failure. And no country has been able to tax itself rich through tariffs either. Integrated economies are the path to prosperity for everybody. But he won't back off on that. And meanwhile, what's been going on? Well, despite the Doge and all that, they're spending more than ever. They're spending. And that's where Musk finally blew up. Musk has got his odd things and so on, but he's got enough economic understanding to realize that this is a bad path. And he called it out. And there's no calling something out with Trump and getting a minor reasoned pushback. They know it's just going to blow up into a tantrum. I don't know. I hope things get straightened out. I hope that the economically smart people eventually start to dominate the discussion south of the border, and we can get back to having that integrated trade that we should, that would benefit both sides. I mean, he's going to run out of allies. I mean, there's always more people who'll come around and kiss the ring of the king and not question his actions. But when the heavyweights like Elon Musk are saying we're out, and he certainly didn't do it diplomatically, hopefully some of that's getting home to the orange man. But I mean, again, when we talk about realism and politics, it doesn't necessarily come together. I'm looking here too at the BC. We got David Eby. There's the part where we're talking about consensus and getting another pipe to the coast. There's the cowardice of Carney, right? The bottom line is, and Poilievre has said as much, it's the job of the federal government to say that's it, it's going to go. Eventually, they just have to say it's going to go. The Trans Mountain expansion, the BC government opposed that too. Christy Clark was opposing that. They were all fighting it, but eventually it went because the federal government had to put their foot down and say it's going, it's going to happen. And you want to start with consultation, but eventually you just say that's done, we're getting it finished. You can't have a province cut off the rail line from one province to another. You can't have them stop a roadway from one province to another. You can't have them divert a river away from one province to another. They also should not be able to stop a pipeline from going from one province to another. In fact, they can't, not according to the Constitution. But Carney doesn't have the balls to enforce it. So EB's saying that the pipeline's not going to happen. Well, then one of the two things is going to happen. Either it's not going to happen, or Carney's going to tell EB, well, that's a shame, but it's happening despite you. This showdown has to be resolved soon, guys. Our GDP per capita keeps going into the toilet. This country's economic outlook is bad. We need energy development. We need resources. A lot of the conversation has been going, too, that's saying, listening to the Andrew Coynes and the other clowns like that out there, too, that, well, look at that. Alberta's got record production happening already. Vashi Kapelos was talking with Daniel Smith about that. You've already got record production. Why do you want to produce more? Well, listen, you dingbats in Ontario are bringing hundreds of thousands of immigrants in every quarter. That means there's going to be more demand for energy and for money and for resources. We can't just stay flatlined with our production. Premier Smith already did say she wants to double production coming out of here, and we can't do that without more export infrastructure. Why do we want to increase it? Because the world wants our product. We'd be stupid. We're punching ourselves in the knackers by trying to keep it in the ground. It's not stopping the world from utilizing these resources. It's just making everything more expensive, and it's hurting our own economy. I mean, liquid natural gas, we got to bring that conversation back to that. Do you really care about emissions? Do you really care about making the world a cleaner place? Well, guess what? A lot of the world's still burning coal. A lot of the world's still burning wood and animal dung in some of the third world countries. Liquid natural gas is a clean form of energy, but we got to get it to them. Canada has some of the largest resources of it on the planet, and we aren't getting it to them. Other knobs, talking about, the Trans Mountain pipeline, the expansion, it's not even full yet. Well, no, they don't run it at 100% capacity, but it's getting darn near full, and the contracts are getting bought out for that to export and get it into use. We need more. Other people saying the demand for oil is going to go away, because that's peak oil crap, guys. That's been going on, that conversation, since the 60s. Since before I was born, they've been talking about that. The demand hasn't gone away. It's going up, and it's been going up for decades. It's still going to go up for decades more. And even if it is going to eventually peak and cap off, well, that's telling us let's develop it and sell it as much as we can while there's still a market for it. And there will be for quite a while yet. But no, we're in this ideological pitched battle with Ottawa, with central Canada, who don't realize where their bread's buttered. There's that frustration. There's those maps that really show the image so well. When you show the Liberal red on the east side of the country, and then you show the same map with who's receiving equalization versus who's paying the bills. And the West is the three provinces in the West are paying the bills. The parasite provinces in the East are draining us, including Ontario. We got a whole lot of economic idiocy in that discussion going on. I mean, I see people talking about, well, look at this Ontario. 50% of Canada's GDP, yeah, but they make up more than 50% of the country. It's a disproportionate amount because they're saying we subsidize Alberta. How on earth do you subsidize Alberta? We've got to have a conversation and defend ourselves and defend our industries better. I mean, some people talking about even Grok, AI, I saw that discussion online, saying the Trans Mountain pipeline is a subsidy. No, it's not. It's something that the government bought because the idiots made the regulatory environment so bad that the private operator was forced to pull out of there, and the government took it on themselves, and they blew it. They took a $7 billion budget and turned it up to $30-some billion to build this thing. And now, it's not a free service to the oil field, guys. They pay tolls to put their product in that pipe and ship it to the coast. They pay to use it. That's not a subsidy. It just means the government has taken over the ability. It would have been a private company that would have charged tolls to do so. And whenever that pipeline is transferred to a private owner, hopefully, it'll be sold to them. And it'll be sold at a discount because the government blew way too much building it, because governments can't build things. They can only screw them up. But so when people talk about that the government's subsidizing Alberta by billions of dollars and they include the pipeline in it, they're lying. That's the bottom line. They're lying. And then what are the other areas of subsidies? Because remember, Guilbeault announced years ago that we're ending all oil field subsidies. Oh, big performative thing. There was nothing to end because the oil field was never getting them in the first place. We're talking about capital tax allowances, things like that, tax deferrals. I guess on a long stretch you could call that a subsidy, but it's just putting off what they have to pay in later. They still pay in. There's no check coming from Ottawa to any energy companies. It doesn't work that way. It isn't that way. But they're calling it that. So we got this illusion from people in Ontario and Quebec that they're subsidizing Alberta. And why are they afraid if we leave? Guys, the numbers are pretty clear. No, the equalization and the rest, why are you collecting equalization if you're subsidizing us? It doesn't make sense. You shouldn't need equalization, which is true. They don't need it. But we've got a shell game, and it's being played by ideologues. So meanwhile as well, BC's handcuffing itself with its mining industry. Up at the north, I mean, it's not just oil and gas. So it looked like they had these copper mines, things like that were going to start coming up. They're getting those rolling, and now suddenly, oh no, they've just put a year-long suspension of mining in the Northwest while they figure out more regulation. How are we going to pay the bills eventually? You know, where do people think money comes from? And these foolish socialists, you know, they want social programs, they want big spending for everything, and at the same time they're working their hardest to shut down every possible means to make the money to go into it. I've always thought that's the left-wing mind, and the right-wing mind is the left-wing mind takes some sort of mental disconnect and inability to understand supply, demand, basic economics, and how to pay the bills. So they can live in a fantasy land to think that we can have this beautiful socialist world where everything's paid by the government, and somehow we can shut down every possible industry and means of making the money to pay for all those programs. And it's coming to a crash, and that's why our productivity is in the toilet. That's why Canada is in a bad way with a bleak looking future, which is so frustrating when we are blessed with some of the most abundant resources in the world. So here's BC shutting in their mining now because, you know, the shutting in oil and gas wasn't enough. Meanwhile, this is a neat one that's hit the news with them though. They're partnering with China to build ferries. So the ferry contracts for BC Ferries, there was a Norwegian contractor looking to build it, but no, BC said, hell with that, we're going to go with China. China, you know, speaking of interest, there's a country we want to be beholden to further, isn't it? But that's where they're going. So much for standing up with things such as that. I mean, where do we go, guys? Where do we go? With these new national parks, the mining, I'm running out of things. I don't have my usual teleprompter going on here. Oh yes, the electrification of the world. Let's get back to that myth for a bit anyways. As I said, I was speaking earlier with Nathan Newdorf. It's another interview. We were on for 15 minutes there. We want to go all electric vehicles. Calgary is going to get their electric buses, supposedly. That's been another screwed up contract that's blown up. Even the trial buses, they haven't been able to get them in. We don't have the grid. We don't have the ability. This is back to BC again. They did the Site C Dam, hydroelectric. That took how many years and years and years to get completed? And that was, again, with environmentalists opposing it. Where is this power going to come from? You know, this is again that delusional world, right? How are we going to power these electric vehicles? How are we going to power these electric buses? I think there was even talk about electric ferries, electric planes. You want to get on one? The time might come, but it's not here yet. We don't have the grid. And we are handcuffing ourselves. We don't have hydro ability in Alberta. I mean, there's the other talk we don't hear from the federal government. What about nuclear? Oh, we don't want to talk about that. Well, what's going to come from? Where do we avoid the emissions? How are we going to pay those bills? Look, the system's broken. This is where I keep getting back to the independence aspect. We've got to break the agreement. We've got to shake it up. Nothing else is going to do so. We're in a swirl to the toilet. We've got cowardly politicians that are incapable of making change on the federal front. They feed themselves just on the point of getting reelected. They don't look at the actual needs of the nation any longer. But it's not sustainable. So this is where the West needs to have this referendum. This is where people are saying, why is Smith shaking so many things up? Well, she's frustrated. She can read the writing on the wall. She knows about economics. She knows about the trouble we're in. But what else do you do? Even if Premier Smith doesn't want to go fully independent, let's shake this country up by allowing the referendum on it so we can actually make people realize just how dire things are getting. But they're demonizing her, and they're talking about the selfish Albertans. She was quoted poorly, or she gave the wrong words when she said Alberta has the lowest standard of living on earth, or Canada does. No, okay, that was a poor way to put it. There's certainly many countries that have much lower standards of living than us. The developed countries, though, and at the rate we're going and at the progress we're making on it, yeah, we're sinking. We're sinking fast. We should be up near number one, and we're dropping like a stone when it comes to that. Even though we're sitting on all these resources, we're sitting on all this space, everything from lumber to agricultural to oil and gas. So what have we got to do to change that? Well, I think we got to change the entire system. How do we change the system? Meech Lake, Charlottetown, we tried those in the 90s. Not even close. We didn't get there. Well, maybe if we're on the brink of a province actually saying we're out, we're totally ripping the deal apart, we're going to get out of it, maybe that's what it's going to take. And it's time to stop talking to Ottawa. It's time to talk to Albertans. To heck with Ottawa. You can't reason with them. You can't reason with the unreasonable. And you waste your energy on it. I was at a great event last night down in Turner Valley. It was grassroots things that are happening. This is a fellow named Clayton Foster who lives down there, and he's just been organizing friends into having weekly independence meetings. It started with like half a dozen people a few weeks ago, a month or two ago. Last night there was about 50 people, all at Hard Knocks Brewery, and it's spreading. And we're seeing these little groups popping up all over the place. We're taking the power back from the government hands. We're pursuing the change. And it doesn't matter what the politicians think. And that's how they're not going to be able to stop us. We're playing by the old rules, we're losing. So let's change the book. They gave us an interesting book. When you talk about the referendum, you talk about the Clarity Act, you talk about a province leaving. It's funny, they'll never tell Quebec that they can't go, but they keep telling Alberta that you can't go. The double standard, even in the independence movement and the treatment of it, is pretty striking. And it's great because the government, if they wanted to take away the ability for Alberta to go, they'd have to repeal the Clarity Act. That's all they'd have to do. Then we wouldn't actually have a mechanism. So people do point out that almost no countries give a mechanism for a region to choose to leave, for a democratic way for a province or a state or anything like that to leave a federation. But Canada has one. But they could remove that any time. The House of Commons or the majority vote could get rid of the Clarity Act. Why won't they do it? Because Quebec would go ballistic. So we can thank Quebec for one thing. They're protecting that Clarity Act to keep the means in the hands of the provinces to leave the federation. Just like the pension plan, it's built right into it. I mean, they're saying Alberta can't leave the pension plan. Why not? Well, because it wouldn't be nice. Too bad. We're done playing nice. So it's built in. There's a mechanism for the province to leave the pension plan. The only fighting point is how much of the principle within the pension plan Alberta is entitled to. And they're not going to get rid of that. Quebec already has their pension plan. They were smart enough not to get into the federal one in the first place. We got to start playing by different rules. Stop trying to let them rig the game. Yeah, throw the pieces off the chessboard, start our own game off to the side. We don't have to worry about what they think any longer, guys. We should stop worrying about what they think any longer. We got to stand up for ourselves. And you know what? It will be better for the whole country in the long run. This is hurting everybody. The resources, the healthcare system that's falling apart, everything. We're all going down the tubes, and it's ridiculous when we're gifted again with so much strong resources. All right, so I think I've bent your ear enough. Keep looking to the side of the computer. It's different than these broadcast booths. If you get the chance, though, come down here to the Global Energy Show. Come by the Western Standard booth. We're here tomorrow as well. Again, I'd like to remind you guys, share this stuff. Check all the interviews that are going to be coming up from this show, the people we've been meeting with and people we've been talking to. Share the YouTube, the Rumble, all of those things. This is how we pass the legacy media, pass the Andrew Coynes, pass the snobby CBC, and make real change, have real discussions, talk about real issues. So thank all of you guys for tuning in today. I really appreciate it. It's fun coming from a broadcast booth, but a little different too. And keep up the good fight, guys. We're going to win it. So tune in tonight for the Pipeline. We're going to record that here. Watch the rest of our channels, and I'll see you back in our regular broadcast next week.